Hi, I'm Corey Hart, Education Specialist with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Scat Track program and how to best utilize it for your particular students. This video is designed for you, the educators, and not your students. So throughout this very short video, we're going to be highlighting some different ways to utilize the program as well as how the program first got started. The mission of the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department is the conservation of all species of plants, fish, and wildlife and their habitats for the people of Vermont. And one of the ways that we're able to accomplish that goal is through our educational programs. We have an entire education staff that spends a lot of their time actually going out and going into schools, interacting with the public, and educating Vermonters about our natural resources, whether it be fish, bears, deer, whatever it may be. We spend a lot of effort and time making sure people understand the connection between those animals and their habitats. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit Vermont, we were unable to continue going out into schools as well as even some of the local organizations such as libraries that we interact with on a daily basis. And we were left with the challenge of how do we continue to reach these organizations? And what we came up with was something called the Scat Track program. And through that program, we actually zoomed in with organizations once a week, and we highlighted a specific species. And over the past several years, the program has really taken off. So initially, the first year we did it, we were really impressed with having a few hundred participants on the program, and that was awesome. Now, we're around 2,000 or so participants, and as you can imagine, it is completely unreasonable for department staff to zoom in with all of those schools. It just takes way too much time. So we've condensed the program and changed it a little bit into a format that really works for you, the teachers. And the way the program now operates is once a year we put out 4 pre-recorded videos that highlight a specific species. You can find a list of all the species that we've highlighted in the past at our website, vtfishandwildlife.com, underneath Scats and Tracks, where you'll find more information on the program as well as registration info for the program itself. After you've watched that pre-recorded video with your students, you're then going to go outside and go on a nature hike. After you've taken your students on a nature hike, and I'll cover some quick nature hike tips and tricks that we've learned over the years near the end of this video, but after you've gone on that nature hike, then you're going to go back into the classroom and have a chance to participate on a Q&A session with a department staff member. Ideally, you'll have your students spend some time researching the particular species and coming up with any sort of questions that they may have, so that when they attend the question and answer session with a department staff member, they have a list of questions to ask us. And those sessions take approximately 30 minutes or so, and we have students from across Vermont all participating on the same call. You'll get information for the link for those sessions will be sent to you by email. To participate. Anyone can participate on the Scat and Track program, and that is one of the things that makes it such a unique program, that it really is open to everyone, regardless of age. To sign up for the program, we require that you sign up by December 15th, and that gives us enough time to send out welcome letters to all participants. What you'll receive from us in the mail is a brief letter detailing the program. You'll receive instructions on how to build journals, and I'll go over that in a little bit as well. You're also going to receive enough track identification cards for all of your students. And this is crucial because this is going to be really helpful for you when you're out on your nature hikes. That said, while the program is open to everyone, we are only able to mail out track identification cards and welcome letters to Vermont residents. Anyone can participate, so if you're from another province or state, you're welcome to participate on the program. You can participate on the Q&A sessions, as well as receive email updates from us, but you just won't be able to receive the track ID cards. You can, however, print those off online at vtfishandwildlife.com. After you've registered for the program, you've received your welcome letter in the mail, you've got your track identification cards, now what? Well, in early January, that's when the program starts. So end of December, you're going to receive an email from us with the links to all 4 of the pre-recorded videos. Ideally, you're going to focus on one of these species per week, and that will line up with the weekly Q&A session that we offer. If that doesn't work for your particular particular schedule, that's perfectly fine. You're more than welcome to skip the Q&A sessions if that works for you, and do all 4 sessions in a week. That's really kind of the beauty of the Scat Tracks program, is you can modify the program to whatever works for you and your students. We completely understand that not all schools can spend a 4-week period highlighting Vermont species. Sometimes you're only able to do a 3 or 4 day period. And if that's the case, you're going to have access to those pre-recorded videos and those track identification cards to make it happen. Now, speaking about the pre-recorded videos, well, what exactly do those include? Well, the program itself is called Scat Tracks, and that's almost a misnomer, because while we do focus on the Scat and Tracks, what we're actually primarily focusing on in video is the life cycle of the individual species. That's what we're trying to get your students to really understand. So let's say, for example, we were focusing on a possum as one of our species. We'd be going over the entire life cycle of that critter. We're going to focus primarily on habitat. That's the main takeaway that we're covering in every single video, because that's crucial when you go out on your hike. Then near the end of all of our videos, then we highlight how to look for sign of those particular critters when you're out there on your nature hike, and that really helps to tie it all in together. But primarily we're focusing on the life cycle and the habitat, and then the tracks and scat aspect is kind of that fun aspect to tie it all in when you're out there on your nature hike with your students. Oftentimes, teachers will take it a step further and have their students create a creative writing essay or a mini research paper on the species that they highlighted. So to help you in those efforts, if that's a route that you decide to do, on our website at vtfishandwildlife.com, you can find a link to critter pages. And we have detailed information on every single one of the species that we have highlighted throughout these videos. And if you go to that link and look at the critter pages, and you hold those next to the videos, you might see that they are almost identical. And that's because we use those critter pages as a reference point when we created the videos to try to make it so that everything kind of meshed together perfectly for you when you're conducting your lessons. So a large portion of this program relies on you, the teacher or educator, to actually go out and lead your students on a nature hike. And for some of you, that may come quite naturally. Maybe you've done a lot of nature hikes with your students in the past, but we understand that for everyone, it might not be that easy, and it can be quite a hurdle. So what I'm going to do right now is provide you with a couple tips and tricks that we've learned over the years that are really going to help you make the best of your nature hike and make sure that your students really get the most of their experience when they're out there in the woods with you. So this all really starts right from the beginning in the classroom about the day before. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that you notify all of your students that the next day they're going to be going outside and to dress appropriately. This might also include notifying their parents as well, depending on the age group, so that they know to bring boots, snow pants, appropriate coats, gloves, all the stuff they need to have at least 30 to 45 minutes outside and to be comfortable. On the day of your hike, you're going to want to double check to make sure that they have all the appropriate clothing. If you spent enough time with students, you'll know that there's always somebody that shows up with shorts on when it's time to go outside in -degree temperatures. So it's always double check if there's any sort of situation like that. If I'm leading a nature hike and somebody shows up in sneakers and shorts, unfortunately that participant doesn't get to participate that day, because that's a safety concern for us. You have to dress appropriately to be able to participate on the hike. The other thing we're going to do is take into account any sort of either medical or physical disabilities that your participants may have. So let's say, for example, I'm leading a nature hike during the summer months and I have several participants that have bee allergies. So make sure that you pack those EpiPens or anything else that you need. Oftentimes, depending on age, your students will already have that stuff. That's just something you want to be aware of when you're out there leading those hikes. If you have some students that might have physical disabilities, that's going to go into where you choose to hike. So we want our nature hikes to be completely inclusive and include all of your participants. I'm standing right now on a lovely nature trail up at the Little River State Park. And quite frankly, if there wasn't the snow that I'm standing on, this would work for a lot of different mobility inclined participants. But if I was going to do a nature hike at your school, and let's say you have participants that are in wheelchairs, that's awesome. We can still include those participants even if we're just doing a short nature hike along the backside of a baseball field. You're going to find evidence. So you'll find different tracks, you'll find scat in areas that you might not think of as a traditional hike. So just kind of keep in mind what your participants' limitations are, and then change where you're going to go based on that. And that'll help to make sure everybody really enjoys themselves when they're out there on their hike with you. So over the years, I have lost track of the number of nature hikes that I have led, whether it be for Scat Tracks or just regular nature hikes for local organizations across the state. And there's been some hikes that have gone absolutely great, and there's been other hikes that have been a little hectic. And when you sit down and you look at, what went wrong, or how can we improve on these hikes, there's one thing that always stands out, and that is having just a short discussion at the beginning of the hike to go over your expectations. If you start your nature hike by just saying, hey students, we're going to go outside and we're going to look for tracks, that is not going to work. 9 times out of 10, it's going to become chaotic very, very fast. And that's not what you want. You want your students to have an enjoyable time on their walk looking for tracks, but you also need to make sure that it's safe and educational. So while we're still inside, what I like to do is just highlight some basics with your students and set those expectations right from the beginning. So for starters, we're going to tell them, well, where are we going? If you're going on a set trail, like where I'm at today, primarily you're going to want your students to stay on that trail. And can just tell them that we're going to be walking single file. When we're out there in the woods, we're looking for sign of the critters, but there's always that small chance that we might actually see evidence of a critter when we're out there, or actually see the physical critter. And to increase our chances, it's important that we're quiet. So we're going to use our whispering voice when we're out there in the woods. We're not shouting, we're not screaming, and we're really focusing on trying to find that correct habitat. If you're going out searching in an area where there isn't a set trail, let's say you're going out in a section like behind me where it's just woods, that's awesome, that's perfectly fine. But in that scenario, you actually want to spread out. So it only takes about 3 people walking single file to create a trail. So if I'm going in an area where there isn't a trail with my students looking for sign, you actually want to have them fan out, and that's going to create, and basically it's going to make sure that you're not leaving evidence that you were there other than your tracks. There's not going to be a set path going through the woods from all your students. So it really depends on where you're hiking. The other thing I'd like to cover is a concept known as L&T. So L&T, for those of you that don't know, is something called leave no trace. And what it means is, well, we're going to leave no evidence that we're out there in the woods. The only evidence that should be there are my footprints. All other evidence should be gone. And one really popular thing that pops up actually recently is you'll see a lot of people like to go out to, whether it be rivers or wherever, and they stack rocks. And that is the exact opposite of L&T. While it might be fun to stack those, when I go out there and I go to that river, I know somebody's been there. And we want to make it obvious, or we want to make it seem that when we go out on our nature hike, that maybe nobody has ever been in this area before. It feels like that to us. And if you see an area where somebody stacked up rocks, or they broke a lot of trees down and caused a lot of damage, then that's not L&T. We're leaving evidence of ourselves behind, and that's what we don't want to do. Same thing goes with if you pack a snack, and I highly encourage you to bring snacks for your students, whether just for granola bars or whatever it may be. Make sure that they're picking up their trash. Same with the crumbs. So if we are eating an apple, you actually don't want to toss your apple core. Bring that apple core back with you and dispose of it properly. You don't want to throw it in the woods. So depending on the conditions that you have, you might have, like I have today, I have about 1 inch to 2 inches of snow. And I've only been standing in this spot for about 30 seconds. And as you can see, it's already all tracked up. And if we're out there with an entire class of 30 students and we're looking for tracks in snow, very quickly it's going to be hard to find the actual tracks that we're looking for because our students are going to be stepping all over the place and all over our tracks. So you want to make it clear to your students that once you find a track, stop, call over the class so the entire class can go over, and then at a distance where we're not stepping on the tracks, then we can all look at them. Because you want to make sure that every student can see the track. From there, you want to take out your track identification cards and have the students try to determine on their own what track it is that they found. So we're going to look at the different aspects, so talk about waddlers, hoppers, bounders, trotters, and try to really narrow it down to what it is that we're looking at. And then you can even take a survey of the students of, who thinks it's a deer, or who thinks it's a coyote or a gray fox, and then talk about why it is the particular track that you found. If you don't have a lot of experience looking for or identifying tracks, don't worry, that's not a big deal. That's not the purpose of leading these nature hikes at all. The main purpose is honestly just getting out there at nature, understanding the habitats, and then slowly, as you get more comfortable leading these hikes, your tracking skills are going to increase as well, and you'll become a better educator in that respect. But if you come across a track that you don't know what it is, it's not a big deal. In your welcome packets, you're going to receive directions of how to make a nature journal or a sketchbook. And yes, you could go out there and just have your students take regular old notebooks as they go into the woods and sketch what they find. But what we found is that if you have your students actually create their own journal, they get a lot more excited about journaling in their homemade version than they would just using a regular notebook. You can do whatever works for you, but I would encourage you to have them kind of create their own nature journal for sketching. Once you're out there and you actually find tracks or scat, instead of taking a photo of it, what I want you to have your students do is actually take their pencils and using their journal, sketch that track or scat. And then you can go back in the classroom and using those sketches, identify what it was. And you get a lot closer to, and you can study it a lot better if you're sitting there tracking or sketching it out. So even though it only takes you 5 minutes or so, that's a whole lot longer than the amount of time it takes you to take a photo. So they'll be able to really discover different aspects of the track. So they might notice with this, a deer, for example, they might notice those dew claws a little bit more defined in the back than they would if they were just taking a photo. If it's a really cold day when you're out there on your hike, don't be afraid to stop your class early and have them go back inside. You don't have to stay and do a full 35-40 minute nature hike. So if it's very, very cold, feel free to just have them go back inside early or do your nature hike on a day when it's a little bit more appropriate. If it's really cold out, your students just aren't going to get the most of their experience, so it's important to keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind as well is if you're hiking in an area where there might be some sort of dangers, to point those out in advance to kind of get ahead of it. So for example, if you're hiking along a lake edge, make sure that they know to not go out on the ice. Unless it's been checked by an adult. If you're hiking along a stream or a steep riverbank, to stay away from those areas. So anywhere there might be any sort of dangers, just point those out ahead of time and just kind of get ahead of it. So now that you've gone out there, you watched the pre-recorded videos, you've done your nature hike, you've done your sketching, now it's time to tie it all back together. So when you're back in the classroom, have your students sit down and think about I wonder statements, so things that they're still curious about. That way when they participate on the question and answer sessions, which are held virtually, some of those questions can be answered. As an educator, we would find it very helpful on our end if you kind of vet some of those questions ahead of time and maybe pick 2 or 3 that you want to ask the larger group about, and that'll make those sessions go a little bit smoother for everybody. Many of you also might hear other schools that have the exact same questions, and if that's the case, just make sure not to ask those ones so we don't have repeat questions throughout the session and we can make the most of it. The pre-recorded videos are all done around a 3rd or 4th grade level. So what that means is if you have kindergarteners or if you have 12th graders, those videos might have information that's a little bit lower than their level or might be a little bit too high. So we leave it up to you as the educator if you want to show them those videos. I encourage you to. There's enough good information in there that they'll get a lot of the information. Or what you can do, and we have some teachers that do this, is you can watch the video yourself and then share tidbits about that particular species in the classroom. You're not required to show the pre-recorded videos. And that's kind of the beauty of the Scat and Tracks programs, is it encourages you as an educator to highlight these 4 species and gives you a variety of ways to do it. In recent years, we are at over 2,000 participants on the Scat and Track program, which is absolutely mind-boggling for Vermont. So our participation numbers on this program have just been going through the roof, and it just goes to show you just how interesting some of our Vermont species are and how enthusiastic our Vermont schools have been for the program. So at Vermont Fish and Wildlife, we are committed to making sure that your students make the most of this program. So that means that we are available by email to answer any additional questions that you may have, whether it's about how to lead a nature hike, or you have additional questions about the species and your students weren't able to attend the Q&A sessions. You can reach out to us by email and we'd be happy to answer those questions for you. And my email address is at the bottom right there. You can see it listed on the screen. It's corey.hart@vermont.gov. So after you have participated on the 4 species that we are highlighting this year, if you decide that this is something you want to continue on throughout the year, you can find a list of all previous species on our website at vtfishandwildlife.com underneath Scat and Tracks. And that will actually allow you to continue to highlight a different species throughout the year. We found that some educators prefer to just focus on the 4 species per year. Others focus on a wide range of species throughout the year. You can do it however you would like to. So again, never hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions about leading those nature hikes, participating on the program, you need those Scat and Track links, anything like that. We're here to help you make the most of your program. And we really hope that you enjoy yourself getting out there and having those nature hikes with your students. Now, get out there and have some fun tracking.